How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, to talk a couple of things on today's show. Talk about a couple things, some more Maxx Crosby stuff, as well as some more WBC stuff. So we learned yesterday, late last night, of course, after I record the NFL free agency recap, there were some more moves that were made today. Daniel Jones got a new deal, some other moves that were made after I put out my NFL free agency day one recap that were made. And we'll talk about some of them. But the major news to come out of yesterday was the fact that the Ravens pulled out of the Maxx Crosby deal. The Raiders, they posted something on social media, or they released a statement basically saying that the Ravens have kind of rescinded on the deal and they're backing out. And they did make a corresponding move. With that being said, they went and signed Trey Hendrickson to a contract, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's a lot of speculation as to why that was the case. When this type of stuff does happen, and it doesn't happen very often, it's usually because of a failed physical, which I believe is what was the reason for that. So Crosby is now still with the Raiders. Now they did go and they signed Trey Hendrickson, who, on the free agent market was probably the most coveted pass rusher on the free agent market, and is a few years older than Maxx Crosby, and he, dealt with his injuries last year, didn't play a ton of games, but he is a pass rusher, and the Ravens do need help on that defensive line with some of the young, unproven guys that they have. So I do like that move. And on top of that, you do keep your 2 first-round picks, which is essentially what they had to give up to get Crosby. And I did talk about that price being a little too steep. And now they keep those picks, but now they got to, adjust their cap situation because you took on now this 4-year contract of Trey Hendrickson. And I believe it was 4 years for $112 million, I want to say, was the contract that Hendrickson signed. So again, the Ravens, they still end up getting their pass rusher, but the Ravens, it's kind of been a rough offseason for them so far because of, and yes, the contract was for $112 million. They lost, their center. They also lost a Patrick Ricard now who went to the Giants, their fullback. They lost their punter. They lost Isaiah Likely. The Giants, of course, signed another one of their cornerbacks. They definitely lost some pieces this offseason. I still think this is going to be a good team going into next year if Lamar Jackson's healthy and you still have Derrick Henry. And now you add Trey Hendrickson, who's, been playing in that division all those years with the Bengals. But, there are guys that they're going to have to replace. So, yeah, that was very interesting that went down because, you just didn't expect it. And it does, you look at that and say, and this has been said, that no deal is official, before the league year actually starts. And, that's, what happened here. Yeah, there was an agreement, but it wasn't official until Crosby had to pass his physical. And I guess, that didn't happen as he's still trying to rehab from, his knee injury that he suffered last year. And now here we are. The Ravens do keep their first round picks for this year and next year. They do sign an older pass rusher that, didn't really play a ton of games in 2025, but Trey Hendrickson does help. So it's still a good move. Again, it's a need that the Ravens had to address, and that's what they did. And now let's see what else they do here in this offseason. But yeah, Maxx Crosby for now is staying with the Raiders, but he's most likely still going to get traded elsewhere. I know Dallas was a contender, and Dallas, definitely could use another pass rusher after, letting go of Micah Parsons and trading him to Green Bay. But now the other thing is, too, is you take on Maxx Crosby's situation. It's just, you could have just figured things out with Micah. I don't know. But Maxx Crosby is still a very good player. Like I said yesterday, one of the premier pass rushers, but, you already had one of the premier pass rushers in Micah Parsons, and you let him go because, you couldn't figure figure out an agreement. But we'll see if Dallas ends up being the spot for Crosby, or if when it's all said and done, he ends up staying with Vegas. That would be quite something. I mean, I still think he's going to end up going elsewhere. The Raiders are going to end up moving off of him, but we'll see what ends up happening there. So that was the news that broke last night. Again, Ravens still get their pass rusher. A couple of other moves. So Okonkwo, the tight end from Tennessee, he signed with the Commanders. Kevin Byard, the safety, signed with the Patriots. Daniel Jones also gets a 2-year, $88 million contract extension. So the Colts are able to lock him up for at least the next 2 years. Listen, Daniel Jones, give him credit. Guy gets paid. Guy gets paid. And look, he was probably their best option. I get that. Played well before the injury. But I do worry about the durability. Like, I can't help but worry about that because this guy cannot stay healthy. 2024, he only played in 10 games, but it was because the Giants then let him go and he joined the Vikings and was a backup. And then 2022, he was healthy the whole year and the Giants made the playoffs. But outside of those 2 years, he's always been hurt. Even his rookie season, his first year, they had to put Eli back in for a couple of games because he got hurt. He's a guy that can't stay healthy, and now he's coming off of yet another significant injury. And again, I don't want to sound repetitive, but the Colts, they've been stuck in trying to find their next quarterback. Now, hopefully Daniel Jones can stay healthy these next 2 years, and the Colts, put together another, good season, maybe, with him playing all 17 games. Because prior to the injury, again, they looked like they were on their way to making the playoffs. Then hopefully it works out. It's tough to see Daniel Jones hanging in there and playing a full season. That's just the bottom line. Because injuries just continue to rear their ugly head when it comes to Jones. But we'll see what happens. So, yeah, Jones gets a new contract. We talked about Crosby, obviously. The Eagles signed Tariq Woolen from the Seahawks. Elton Jenkins, who the Packers let go, an offensive lineman. He signed with the Browns. Browns actually been pretty active signing guys to their offensive line. They've added a few offensive linemen. So, that's good, depending on what, the quarterback situation is going to be for next year. We talked about the other moves that they've made as well. We did talk about Geno Smith going back to the Jets. And again, I know his first stint with the Jets, was not great. And the Jets quarterback situation last year was not great. Geno was not good last year with the Raiders. But he is stepping into a better situation. He is. And I think compared to what the Jets had last year, he is an upgrade over Fields and Brady Cook. It's a fact. And, it's not like there was a, future Hall of Fame quarterback out there. There were some other options, like I said, Kyler Murray, and, but Kyler Murray's trying to go to a contender, and Malik Willis is out there. Maybe you go with another veteran, Kirk Cousins. Well, Cousins wants to probably go somewhere where he has a better chance of winning. Get that. But there's definitely worse options the Jets could have went with. And like I said, this is definitely an upgrade over what they had last year. But again, it's not saying much just because, the bar is so low when it comes to quarterback play with the Jets. So we'll see how it works out. But I brought up, talking about the other New York team, the Giants, bringing in Patrick Ricard now, a fullback. I like that move. And just the thought of having him and Cam Scatterboo, lining up, that's, it's going to be tough. Giants are going to be a team that's going to want to run the football, and have that balanced attack with their young quarterback in Jackson Dart. So, I'm hoping Scatterboo is healthy next year. Giants are going to be a much improved team. That's for sure. And you already see things changing with the addition of John Harbaugh now. And also because, Steve Tisch is in a little bit of in some hot water. He's going to be selling his stake to his children. So that was made note of. That they're going to be put into. If I have the exact tweet here from Schefter, yeah. So according to Adam Schefter, New York Giants co-owners Steve Laurie and Jonathan Tisch are requesting to transfer their stakes in the team to their children's trusts, according to an NFL memo obtained by Seth Wickersham and Jordan Raanan. So it looks like the Tisch family, um, making some changes there because Steve Tisch is kind of uh, entangled in some stuff that I don't really want to get into. But obviously, if you're invested into the news, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that was another big thing with the Giants as well that came out. But to kind of segue away from that, because again, the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was obviously Maxx Crosby and that whole situation. So again, we'll see what happens where he ends up now that he is no longer going to be a part of the Ravens. But I wanted to get into now the WBC and talk about what transpired last night. So last night, United States was taking on Italy, and to me, going into the game, I thought, yeah, I mean, they pretty much got this. They're going to be moving on to the next round. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves down 8-0. They did score 6 runs. They made it close. They had Aaron Judge coming up with the tying run on base, and Judge did strike out the former teammate Greg Weissert. And now we're in a situation where, depending on what happens with this game today between Italy and Mexico, the U.S. could find themselves being eliminated already before we get to the quarterfinals, which I thought they basically were in, and so did their manager. So Mark DeRosa made an appearance on MLB Network, and he was chatting it up with his colleagues, and he basically said it was all but certain that they clinched. That they were going to get some other guys off their feet because they didn't trot out their best lineup yesterday. Bryce Harper wasn't playing. Alex Bregman didn't play. Harper did pinch hit later, and I believe Cal Raleigh also wasn't in the lineup as well. They had Noah McLean taking the mound and pitched very well in the first inning, but then kind of got roughed up after that. Ryan Yarbrough came in. He also got roughed up as well. And then also some sloppy plays on the field, pass balls and a double play that should have been an easy double play. And, Keller that's what happens with some pitchers. They just can't throw to a base. And that also led to a run. And, that proved costly because, again, the U.S. went on to score 6 runs. You had a couple of home runs by PCA with the Cubs. It wasn't enough. They came up short. And now, again, their fate rests in the hands of this game that we got coming up today between Mexico and Italy. And basically, so they get in. The U.S. moves on if Italy wins, but also if Mexico wins and they score 5 or more runs. Now, if Mexico wins like 4-3, they're out. So there's still a good chance that they do move on. But if they don't, that's going to look really bad because they went out of their way to recruit everybody. You got Judge in this. You got Paul Skeens. You had Skubal pitch a game. You also got, Mason Miller, Bryce Harper, Alex Bregman. You got Kyle Schwarber, Cal Raleigh. You got all these guys, and you might not even make it to the next round. I mean, I thought, again, they're 3-0. Oh, they're in good shape. But not really. Again, they're not done. I still think there's a strong chance that, depending on what happens with this game, that they'll still end up getting in and making it to the next round. But if they don't, I mean, Mark DeRosa is getting killed on social media because then he didn't help himself out with the press conference that he had, and he said he misspoke. Well, you didn't put out your best lineup. If you put out your best lineup, then you could say, you misspoke. But then, everybody's talking about he had Clayton Kershaw warming up in the bullpen. If they gave up more runs, again, that would have been detrimental to them. Now, again, 8 runs, again, still not pretty. But he really didn't do himself any favors. Now people are calling for him to never manage for Team USA again, which I think if, the US does officially get eliminated, then that's on the table. And then not only that, but people are talking about him just losing his job at MLB Network. I mean, all right, let's relax. Let's relax a little bit. But he also did bring up that, the night before, because they were under the assumption that they did clinch, that they did a little too much partying and some guys were dragging the next day. You can kind of see that based off of some of the plays that were made in the field or lack thereof. So yeah, it's a complete mess. And of course, Judge strikes out to end the game, and you got everybody saying Judge is not clutch. This is what happens. You get to the postseason, he does nothing. Well, look, if this were to have happened last year, before last year's postseason, okay, I get it. But Aaron Judge had one of the best postseasons last year. I know it was brief because the Yankees didn't make a deep playoff run, but Aaron Judge hit what, 600 in the playoffs last year? You can't say he wasn't great. Do we forget the 3-run homer he hit against the Blue Jays? Again, look, the Yankees didn't go that far. I get it. But to say that Judge is not clutch and can't get it done, I mean, come on. And he's been doing well in the World Baseball Classic. He's hit a couple of home runs, hit a laser off the Crawford box. He threw a runner out at third. I mean, Judge has had a good WBC. So it's just, but again, it's Aaron Judge. He plays for the Yankees. So, of course, people are going to find a way to pile on. But I mean, come on. This is not the time to do it. It's not. It's just not. I mean, if you want to point the blame at somebody, you point the blame to the pitching. You point the blame to the manager that didn't know the rules, because now it's going to come down to a tiebreaker most likely, and it's going to go based off of, I guess, right or against it's going to be based off of earned runs. And I know people are talking about it should be run differential, because the U.S. has tops and, is up there in most runs scored in this tournament so far. And they're going to get knocked out? So, yeah, it's not looking good right now for the U.S. Fate rides in the hands of this game coming up later today. But it's just, it's not good. And then, again, the question is once again raised, did they really care? I do agree with that. DeRosa does kind of have his hands tied, because, this is still kind of guys' spring training. And particularly with pitchers, you want to make sure that they're still on their set schedule. So, I understand that, but that doesn't dismiss, just not knowing the rules. U.S. didn't clinch. And, yeah, where is someone on his staff to correct him? He also was, again, on MLB Network with his colleagues, and nobody thought to correct him then. So he got put in a tough spot. So U.S. has got to hope that it goes their way tonight and they get another chance. Because if they get eliminated, I mean, it's DeRosa is going to really feel it. Because again, I mean, all over my Twitter timeline is that clip, and people are just destroying him. So hopefully, for U.S.'s sake, it goes their way tonight. They have a chance to move on and rewrite the wrong that was done here, but maybe not. People are talking about Mexico and Italy colluding with each other to make sure that the U.S. doesn't make it. I'm not going to say that's going to happen. I think both teams are going to go out there and they're going to try to win. They're not going to, just fake it and just say, you know what? We don't want the. I mean, it does make sense. I mean, look, they were down 8-0, but they had the tying run coming to the plate last night in the 9th inning. So, and of course, it was 2 former Yankees. You had Ron Marinaccio, and then you had, Greg Weissert close it out. But hey, listen, congrats to Francisco Cervelli and Jorge Posada. You know, you can tell Cervelli just loves it, loves it. And I really liked Cervelli as a player when he was with the Yankees. Um, good for him, good for the Italians, and of course, I am part Italian, but I'm gonna root for the U.S. That's what I got to do. But good for them. It's U.S. gets knocked out. It's that's not a good look. It's not a good look, and especially when you didn't officially clinch and that you didn't know the rules. You know, um, but this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Also, some other news from last night. That's pretty much the WBC talk. Bam Adebayo with Miami Heat dropped 83 points last night, and that's the second most points ever scored in a game. Now, everybody's all over this because of the amount of free throws that he shot. He took 43 free throws last night. 43. Now, he didn't make all of them, obviously, but that is just an insane number. And I think he shot under, right? Shot under 50%. Yeah, he was 36 of 43 from the free throw line. And, people weren't happy with, how the game was handled, the fouling, and it's just how it, not legit. Yeah, I mean, listen, if it just turns into a foul game, that does turn a lot of people off, you know, because I wasn't like, let's see if I could pull up Kobe's numbers from when he scored 81. Um, because that's the class that now Bam has joined now. It's, Will Chamberlain, who's scored 100 points in a game. And then Kobe Bryant, scored 81 points against the Raptors all those years ago. So so this was on January 22nd. He went 28 of 46. 7 of 13 from 3, 18 of 20 from the free throw line. So he only took 20 free throws. And the Lakers won the game 122 to 104. And he added 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. So I think a lot of people are still going to look at that and say that was probably the better performance because, he's not getting fouled a bunch of times. And it was funny, seeing a clip on social media, his highlights, Bam's highlights from the game, and it's literally just a whole compilation of the free throws he took. So, I can't sit here and say like, oh, I mean, what was really impressive was he had 31 points after the first quarter. That was probably the most, impressive aspect. Having 31 points. Now I don't know what the how many free throws he took after the first quarter. But yeah, he had 31 points after the first quarter. So, yeah, I mean, I get why everybody is why there's a lot of um, outrage over this because again, like it's a lot of free throws. So, but yeah, I mean that hasn't happened in quite some time. So I did want to bring that up. I'll bring that to light. But yeah, I mean he joins an exclusive club. Will Chamberlain, Kobe, and Bam Adebayo. That's the exclusive class that he's in. So yeah, I mean you could sit and criticize it, but that is an exclusive group that he joins. So I wonder if we are ever going to see someone get to 100 points again. Like or is that just a one-time thing? Maybe at some point. But not now. But 83 points for Bam last night, and one of my friends started him in fantasy, so they were very happy about that. I think he ended up with 98 fantasy points. So you take that. I know SGA got me 53 the other night, 53 fantasy points. Fantasy basketball, very close the league is. There's only 4 teams that make the playoffs, but everybody's separated. But the top 6 teams in the standings right now are separated by 1 game. Everybody's 13-7, 12-8. So, it's going to be a close finish. We'll see what happens. I'm trying to go for my second championship. And I've made it to the final. We've done this league now. This is the third year. I've made it to the championship the first 2 years, won the first time, lost last year in the finals. I'm trying to get back. I was able to pick up Jason Tatum. I'm surprised nobody picked him up sooner when there was the reports that he was going to be coming back. So I jumped on it. I jumped on the opportunity. I signed him. I picked him up. So we'll see what happens. But hopefully I win this week. My matchup is pretty close. The projections are pretty close for right now. But that is pretty much it. So I wanted to come on and discuss that because there was, again, a lot of stuff to talk about with the Crosby stuff and obviously the WBC and how this could be a total flop for the US if they end up getting eliminated. But let's hope they're not. And I did want to bring up the Bam Adebayo stuff as well because that was a big deal. 83 points. And the debates that come along with that. Also, with the Islanders, they were losing 3-0 to the Blues last night. So I turned off the game right as the U.S. was about to play Italy. And they ended up winning in overtime. So how about that? They ended up winning 4-3, came back. So I guess it took me to just turn off the TV for them to do that. So, they've gotten some late game dramatics. And they've won these games, which is just big. As they're trying to get into the playoffs. So, and that's pretty much it though from the show for today. Again, wanted to hop on, do another show because again, a lot to discuss. So as always, everybody, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video, to the channel. Make sure to follow us on the social media platforms in the description below and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow us as well. Just look up Infinite Sports, and you'll find us there. And until next time. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off. Have a good one, and I will talk to you guys next time. Take care.